Well, Tom, what you're talking about is fits into a couple of other things that speakers had said down there, and these speakers weren't necessarily, well, they weren't hockey people, but of course, for me in a leadership role in my work life, I was looking for some of those pieces as well, and the one was talking about the damage that can be caused with stealth expectations. And it's us holding expectations of someone and not communicating them to them, and then not understanding why they can't achieve them, or vice versa, where parents have expectations that they haven't communicated with us as coaches, and when their player doesn't achieve them, they're frustrated by it. So that piece of understanding the I'd never heard it referred to before as stealth expectations, but it's really was one of those interesting things. The other one was a lady that Catherine Hickman, that's an assistant general manager of the Cleveland Browns. Her talk was really good. And she's a French Canadian woman that is a lawyer that had worked with the CFL, and now she's down in the NFL as an assistant GM, and some are saying that apparently she might be the first female general manager of an NFL team. But one of the things that she had talked about, that saying that culture isn't chemistry, it's clarity. And it's about making sure that everybody knows what we stand for. And she'd also talked about the difference between standards versus rules. And that these are the standards that we believe in our organization or our team or whatever, not relying on rules. Because she said if you have a whole bunch of rules, then you have to turn into the police officer and enforcing the rules exactly the way they are. But if you have the standards, everybody has to reach the standards. And so some of those are interesting philosophical pieces that I think are great reminders too, that go beyond the X's and O's of what was happening on the ice, and talking about how culture isn't what we preach, it's what we permit.
Yeah. And I think also, like in hockey, because there's so much work on individual offensive skill that a lot of parents, that's what their focus is. Like we have one girl leaving that from to go to one of these super duper leagues or something. And I know her parents, their only focus is what she does when the puck is on her stick. You know that, and she didn't do so well because she was the first year this year, where she was a really big girl, and in the Pee Wee the year before, she was dominating because she was already, as probably fully grown, and all those other parts of the game, she needs a lot of work on them. But the parents, they, they just want that individual offensive skill all the time, and if their expectation is not the same as the goal of the team, and that's something I think we're dealing with all the time with this emphasis on individual offensive skills. Like
Good.
in Stockholm this year when I went to that conference, they were talking about the difficulty of getting kids to get their heads up because they're practicing going around pylons all the time and under things and all this. And then, like you said, they can do anything with a puck, but when you get that puck, your head's got to be up because there's a play there right away. And you have to be able to recognize whether, you should be carrying it or moving it or et cetera, et cetera. So that's a battle we're fighting against all the skills coaches out there.
Jordan, your point on the lady that may be an NFL manager and leadership, standards versus rules, was that what she talked about? And rather than have a sort of a legal policing of, approach, you establish an expectation of standards of behavior, sort of like who we are. Can you elaborate on that a little more? Because I know we're educating coaches to do uh, create an understanding with their group, their parents and their players, of how they're going to do things. And the idea of having standards to me is better than having rules to make them achieve those standards.
Yeah, well, what she had said, she had 3 points to defining your standards, and she said number one was what does it look like when we are at our best? So defining what it would look like for our organization or team or whatever when we're at our best. And then our number two was what do we need to see every day? So what are the daily things that we need? And then the third one was what are we no longer willing to tolerate? So it's taking out the pieces and actually looking critically at the culture of your organization and what are the things that aren't working and getting them out of there. And her idea with it was standards over rules because rules are reactive. And she felt that standards fostered power and ownership. That that your standards you got to live in them, and they're not just words. And then when a standard is modeled, it becomes self-sustaining. She is the way she explained it.
Jordan, I, I think I could put you on the spot on that one. Thinking of those three concepts, can you be more specific in thinking of how you would apply that with your own AAA team?
Well, it is evolutionary, and I think that um, it's something that as a coaching staff you have to talk amongst yourselves to have because there's certain standards that you have, but I think that the more powerful is to create them as a group, and I think that it um, maybe goes back to your mission statement exercise as well, Wally, that having shared vision of what you want. But the standards are more along your daily standards. So you're looking at, and it can be almost anything. I know that um, going back to the covenant that Rick Puttock had created several years ago, and I borrowed it as well. And those are things that are generated both with the coaching staff and the players. And I think that that's where it has to come from to really be valuable or for something that people will live in.
Now, what was the second point? You had standards first, and the second point?
Well, it's just that standards over rules, that rules are reactive, and that standards are things you can live in every day, and that when a standard is modeled, and that's for all, then it becomes self-sustaining.
Yeah. I just wanted to make reference to Morris Lukovich and his similar conversation related to this. Um, and it's who we are, it's the identity created by the standards you set. And, it's as opposed to specifically pointing out or sitting a player, uh, holding them accountable for that behavior. Uh, just a general comment on reminding us of our standards and who we are, what we want to be, might help solve the problem more than dealing with it reactively. It makes absolute sense, Jordan. It's just teaching self-awareness and personal control.
Yeah, and that was another thing that a guy by the name of Ryan Blank was sharing in his that he he said that people who want you to hold them accountable need a babysitter. They don't need a coach. And so he's talking about the power of personal responsibility and placing that back on the individuals. So you have the standard, you have clarity in your standards, and then put it back on the individuals themselves. And he also had said people will succeed to the level that they believe that they will be successful. So you have to give them the belief that they can succeed beyond the level that they're at right now, um, and then work with them to get there.
I love that. It sort of blends in with my concept of transmitting belief in terms of believing in them and having expectations because authentically, deep down, you really do believe they're capable of that. And that's it's heavy stuff, but it's really good stuff. I really appreciate it. Now, the I I think it's appropriate now. I had this talk, coffee with George Kingston and Tim Bothwell yesterday, and we were talking about the accountability piece. And oh, we got into addressing unacceptable behaviors on the ice, like not passing the puck, being a puck hog, uh, and how do you address that in a way that fits the model that you're talking about? And I think it means you need to talk about that before it happens, and you react to it, and that's what you're saying. So the specificity of those issues that I've identified over a lifetime are quite simple. Um, I think shift length is something that determines has a great deal to do with your culture and your standard, the expectation of the level of play and the pace of play. And so we say holding people accountable to that. And I remember you making them aware of that. Just having your flip charts on that they had to come to the bench, flip the volleyball score sheet on the defensive door and the offensive door as they changed. They were being conscious of a standard of behavior and a way of playing. That's connecting to the culture and expectations and who you want to be. So, how do you feel you progressed in that trait over your period of coaching? Uh, have you got a better handle on that now, and or is it still something that you continually have to deal with?
Well, I think that the what you're talking about with the with the volleyball scoreboard on the bench, it was an idea. I don't know why it came to my mind, but it did. In that a visual reminder of what an appropriate shift length should look like, because there were just so many kids that came with poor changing habits and shift lengths that a minute and a half was common for a player coming out of U15 AA. And so the way it works is sit down with the team and we do the simple math that if we have 40-second shift lengths, there should be approximately 30 shifts in a period. And so we put the flip chart in the middle of the bench. And as you said, when a line changes or a D pairing changes, it's their responsibility, one of the ones coming off the ice, to flip it once. So trying to get to 30 or more in a period. And it's a visual reminder to the kids, but it also helps to train them to understand what 40 seconds feels like. And So I use it usually at the start of a season and if we get into a little bit of a lull, because it actually is really interesting to see the kids pick up on it themselves. If we've had a period where another team has kind of had the momentum, lots of times our shift lengths are too long and that number is low. And so they figure it out and that piece. But uh, where where I see things is that at the start of every season, you kind of have to go and train them again, because you have new players joining your club from different situations and that. So we'll be using it likely at the start here again. Um, and the other piece with it is it's not just the length of shifts, it's when to change and pieces like that working with them, because it it can be a numerical advantage and can be a numerical disadvantage if you change it at appropriate times, or inappropriate times. So it's one of those pieces. It's a micro part of the game that they need to be aware of. So we'll continue to work with that, and that is a standard. They do know that. I was chatting with a coach the other day that he lets the players and parents know that if you take an extra long shift, when I sit you down for that, it isn't a punishment. He said, "What all I express is that you've already taken that ice. You've taken your ice for that part of the period. If you were out there for a 2 minute shift, well, that's twice the amount of a regular shift. So I guess you need to sit for one shift and to balance it out." And so that sort of philosophy too. But it comes back to the standards and it was General Morrison that said the standard at which we walk the past or the standard that we accept. So anything that we allow is what we accept. So we have to make sure that are we accepting of it or is this truly what we believe in?